It's a great pleasure to be here today with Gary and Shona Allen. And Gary's released a book called In Search of the Swan. It's the way the book was written is truly amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about this so-called gift that you have and how the book was written?
Yeah, first of all, can I say it's a pleasure to do this interview with you, Andy? Well, the gift started when I was 33. I suddenly found I was able to write in inspired terms. I picked up the pen, paper, started to write, and before I knew where I was, I had 260 words. Read the words, somebody was obviously talking to me. It later transpired that through this gift I could write inspired poetry and philosophy.
So what you're saying, Gary, is that this writing, this creativity is coming from a different source?
Yeah, I think it comes from an extraneous source. I have my own personal beliefs on it. I don't expect anybody to believe where I think it comes from. All I know is that it just comes.
Well, some people may say that you're just a good poet.
Yeah, well, well, the thing is that I've written about 300 or so poems. I come from a secondary modern education background. The poetry is all different styles, personalities and characters, and they're all very different from myself.
So this is, it's not coming just from one source then, is it?
No.
Are you saying that it comes from, like, various inspirations?
Yes, I would say so. Yes, and I think Shona would agree with that.
Well, definitely, because having known Gary now for 8 years and looking at his poetry and his writings, they're so different. They're varying quality, varying styles that, for instance, if you say a certain poem, you could say, oh, well, that's Milton, or oh, that's Keats, because they have a very distinctive style about them and a certain quality about them. When you look at Gary's works, some of the different poems are so different and in different styles, you would have to say, well, they come from different people, from different minds, because they're so different.
I've actually seen Gary write, and I must say it is amazing, but again, a lot of people might say, oh, he's just a creative person,
yeah,
you know.
just a great imagination.
Yeah, that's what I mean. What would you say about that?
Well, that's what they said about Shakespeare, you know. I mean, Shakespeare's written 36 plays and 154 sonnets. And people have often wondered, could one person actually write so many works, so many diverse and different works?
Are you saying that Shakespeare wasn't the writer, or was he inspired by other people? Was it teamwork, or?
Well, from my personal opinion, I believe it wasn't one man. I believe it's a number of people. But you only have to look at Sonnet 86, for example, where he says, the affable familiar ghost which nightly gulls him with intelligence. That's that meaning, to feed him with intelligence. And I believe I have a similar gift in the fact that I get fed with intelligence. I get fed with my works.
So what you're saying, Gary, is you're a modern day Shakespeare.
Well, I don't like to class myself as a Shakespeare, but I am a poet and a philosopher, and I am inspired. I got the inspired muse, and that's why my poems are so different. My philosophy is so different, simply because it comes from an extraneous source that enables me to do this. I mean...
Well, and of course they also do say, a lot of people with the Shakespeare works, that how come he was an expert on so many different subjects?
Yeah, of course.
I've actually read the book In Search of the Swan.
I
found it an amazing read.
Thank you very much, yeah.
But there are three pieces of work in that book.
Because 3 pieces, yeah.
It's actually a love story and how you met Shona.
Yeah.
We know that already. But are we going to see... I hear that you're going to release another book called Dead Poet's Pen, is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, yeah. The In Search of the Swan was basically, it touches on the love story, but of course it's my story. It's my story on my journey of road to enlightenment. I'm in the process of writing it now, and I'll soon be finished it. Dead Poet's Pen is actually a collection of my philosophy and poetry. Not all of it, by all means, but a vast majority, because I want people to make their own mind up. about the works. It's up to them to decide. Whether they believe me or not. I mean, I can only tell you how the gift works for me.
Yeah, but
basically, I mean, it's not just when I write it. I also been able to tell the future, predict the future. So it's not just the poems and the philosophy, but that's just part of it.
it's the first book, In Search of the Swan.
Yeah.
Tells us about your gift.
Yeah.
And the second book, in fact, will actually be demonstrating that gift.
Yeah, it will. As I say, it will be a collection of the works. I'm happy to, I'm happy to call myself just a pen. I'm just a pen for the authors of the universe. That's how I put it, because I don't know the real source. I mean,
Sounds incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's anybody's guess, but I mean, all I can say to people is that the poetry was written at the speed of in about a minute. I produced the works in about a minute.
How many works would you say you've written over a period of?
Oh, I've literally got hundreds of works, but really good publishable quality works. I'd say I've got about 300. I would say something.
And this
like
is from someone that's had quite an ordinary educational background.
Yeah, I just come from an ordinary secondary modern school. I left school early. I'd say basically I had a very limited education. Over the past few years, with all the writings that I've done and everything, and the philosophy, well, I'm sort of I've sort of been re-educated.
There is a connection, isn't there? Another connection, something that you've discovered that you're going to exclusively share with us.
Yes. Yes. I have reasons to believe that a certain Francis Bacon, the philosopher, is buried in Norwich. People may say, well, that's ridiculous because he's buried in St Albans.
Well, that's what I thought.
Yeah, but people may well say that.
Right?
Exactly. They may well say that. But
what makes you think he's buried in Norwich?
Well, in his will, he does mention that he'd like to be buried obscurely. And if he was buried in St Albans, it's hardly obscurely, is it? But we did come across something in a church in Norwich. The writing is in Latin, but it does give you a clue as to where he's buried. I would like to add that I can't be certain of it, but...
Is this your theory?
It is a theory, yeah. It's only a theory, it's only a supposition, but something that I think is worth investigating. What do you think about that, Shona? Yeah.
Well, I think so. I think that there are certain clues on the monument itself that would certainly point very much in the direction of talking about Sir Francis Bacon, the philosopher.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting.
What you're saying is, in fact, is this can change history.
Yes, it could very well.
Yeah, I mean there are reasons as well to believe that Sir Francis Bacon comes from royal blood. But other than that, I would not wish to add any more to that. Just to put the thought out there.
Are you going to explain this in a future book?
Perhaps.
You're not saying much on that, are you?
No, perhaps. I think it's something that we should let people go and search for themselves.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's not for me to say that. I think it's for people to go and research.
And it is just a theory, or do you really believe that he's buried elsewhere?
It's a theory. It's a theory, Andy. I believe it. I'm pretty convinced, but I could be totally wrong. And if someone could prove me wrong, well, I'd be delighted. It's just a theory I have, and I think that Shona's of the same feeling. It would be nice to believe that Sir Francis Bacon is actually buried in Norwich, to put Norwich firmly on the Elizabethan map.
Absolutely extraordinary.
I mean, in fact, Norwich does have a number of links with the people connected with Francis Bacon. For instance, John Dee, Dr. John Dee.
Yeah,
oh, yes.
Because his son is Arthur Dee, isn't it?
Arthur Dee.
Arthur Dee.
Right.
Arthur Dee actually did move to Norwich, and he lived in Norwich and was a great friend of the
Sir Thomas Browne.
Sir Thomas Browne,
Yeah.
the doctor, the physician
Yeah.
in Norwich.
You've certainly done your homework on this. I
Yeah,
must say,
well, it's
but
very interesting.
I find it fascinating and incredible.
And
that you
Sir
should.
Thomas Browne was a very interesting character because he was also
Yeah.
a big sort of aficionado of Sir Francis Bacon's philosophy.
Yeah, he loves Sir Francis Bacon's philosophy. See, there's the link there. So, people may say to us, well, I mean, the Bacon family are well known in Norfolk. But,
Absolutely.
People may say to me,
Absolutely.
well, that's complete nonsense. But it's only a theory, and in actual fact, I've written a poem.
This has completely restructured the puzzle, hasn't it?
Well, it has. It's very interesting, and I'm pretty convinced that Francis Bacon was involved in the works of Shakespeare. Involved in the first folio. There are reasons to believe that. I don't believe he's the sole author, but did Shakespeare?
A lot of people will disagree with you on that.
Well, they certainly would. But did Shakespeare, as as the person we know him as or believe, did he really exist? I mean, that is another point, because the bust in
Trinity Church.
Trinity Church. Thank you, Shona. In Stratford, that was changed. I mean, the original depicted Shakespeare with his hands on a bag of grain, depicting that he was a grain merchant. So, there are little pointers that lead you to think perhaps the William Shakespeare that we know and love may not be the William Shakespeare.
I couldn't hear a lot of Shakespearean fans out there raising
yes,
their
yeah.
arms in the air. Quite
yes,
controversial, isn't
I
it? Really?
think so, yeah.
The thing is, it might be quite controversial, but, and there's a big but here, there isn't actually any real solid evidence for Shakespeare in the fact that it's supposition that he went to the school there. Well, there are no actual records that he did. It's believed he did, but we don't actually know.
What about all the works? All the works.
Well, where did he get the education from? That's the point.
The folio was actually published after his death.
I see. So.
Yeah.
So of course,
And,
if he wasn't alive to publish it, well, who did publish
Well,
it?
and of course, there's another interesting thing is that Shakespeare's birthday was supposed to be the 23rd of April,
St. George's
St.
Day.
George's Day, and his death was supposed to be St. George's Day, 23rd of April. And of course, Andy, that is the day that me and Shona got married, on St. George's Day.
That's
So-
a bizarre coincidence.
Well, it
isn't
is, yeah, and
You know-
not only that, to think that I spent most of my life in Stratford, not Stratford-upon-Avon, and my book is, of course, In Search of the Swan, and Shakespeare was known as the Sweet Swan of Avon, so there is a lot of connections.
Which, coincidentally, Avon backwards is Nova, which is
Nova,
the star.
which is the
Oh, I
star.
see the star.
Which
Yeah.
connects with a star called Cygnus, which is the swan.
It's the Swan, yeah.
Now, Cygnus, the star, was actually one of the Rosicrucian signals for the new Enlightenment as well.
It was indeed, yeah. I think that there's a lot. I cover a lot of this in my book In Search of the Swan.
Well, I must say I'm finding it personally very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, we must.
A lot of people will argue with you and
Well,
say
they will. Well, they will, of course. And there'll be a lot of people who stick to the tradition, and that's what they know best.
I think it's about with history. I think that people have to be very careful with history, because, as we all know, history is written by the victors. They say,
Yeah.
very famous,
Oh, absolutely.
very
Yeah.
famous saying.
Yeah.
So I think that when we look at history, I think that we should look at it with an open mind.
Yeah, indeed.
And with a search.
Yeah. That's up to people to make their own mind up. I have my own opinion. I have my own opinion.
everybody's entitled to an opinion.
Yeah, but it's not for me, Andy, to
Well, we're here
thrust
today
my
to
opinion.
actually
Exactly.
question you.
Yeah, exactly.
And find out what makes you tick.
Exactly. It's not for me to tell people what it is, because I don't know, do I? I honestly don't know what it is. But what I do know is that something is happening. It comes from somewhere outside of my own thinking. That's what I do know, and I think my wife Shona, my lovely wife Shona, she would back that up.
Well, you are an incredible writer, a great poet, and I think the question remains open
Yes,
to
indeed.
where the source is coming from. Indeed, you do get inspiration from somewhere.
Yeah.
All these theories that we've spoken about today, absolutely fascinating, and it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Yes, pleasure to meet you as well, and to talk to you today.
Real pleasure.
Thank you very
and I'm
much.
sure that we're going to continue this interesting conversation at a later date when we read the new
anytime.
book.
You're more than
we read The Dead Poet's Pen.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure, thank you.